Welcome to The Roofer Show with your host, Dave Sullivan. You found the podcast that helps roofing contractors grow their businesses, make more money, and have more free time.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Roofer Show podcast, the place to be if you want to grow a more profitable roofing business. I'm your host, Dave Sullivan, the roofer coach, and I help contractors learn the business end of the roofing business. So today I've got a great guest coming back on. This is Greg DeSimone. We've had him on before, and we're going to talk about private equity. And I reached back out to Greg so we could get an update. It's moving so fast. I wanted to see what's happening. We just had him on here not too long ago, but from what I'm hearing, it is the wild, wild west. So, Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's actually when we first talked, I had just launched my new M&A firm, and now we're a year into it. So it was fast and furious trying to get everything built up. So I'm busier than I was with client work, but at least it's stuff I'm comfortable with now. Doing all the infrastructure stuff, building a business is hard.
Yeah,
Starting from scratch is hard. No, I envy all these guys that you work with that have done it, because having done it last year and starting from scratch, it was challenging. It was not as easy as I expected it to be.
Yeah, well, that's I think what most contractors find out. You know, they either came up through the trades or they came up through sales, and they'll see their boss driving around, in a Mercedes saying, God, this guy doesn't do squat, man. This looks pretty easy until you get out and do it. And the problem always is, like I say, they have one of those expertises. They can either, and we talk about the three-legged stool all the time, is that you've got to sell work, you've got to do work, and you've got to keep score, the accounting end of it. And usually they're good in one of those areas, one of those legs, but the other ones are weak. So if you don't have a balanced business, the whole thing falls over and doesn't work. And that's what so many contractors find out. And this is what I do, and this is how I help them. But Greg, tell us a little about, just bring us up to date, how you got into the business, and tell us some of the things that you're doing and what's the latest in private equity.
Sure. Well, I got into the business because I was doing coaching similar to, but my focus wasn't on a specific industry. It was helping businesses in general with succession and exit plans, either transitioning their business to the next generation and making sure it was transitionable, transferable, or if that wasn't possible or it became not a good option, help them maximize the value of their business, prepare it for sale, and then help and eventually sell it. I was doing a lot of referral work back then, but when I was dealing with brokers, and I can tell you that brokers is a generic term. There are some very, very good ones, but I ran across too many that weren't very good. And I was getting angry that I thought the business owners weren't being represented well. And there's too much money on the table. There's too many things you need to know and too many things you need to take care of during this process. And I said, you know what, the only way to really do this is do this myself, and help as many as I can. Thankfully, as I've got more and more involved in this business and I've gone up market a little bit with some other M&A advisors and investment bankers, I found much more honest people, much more people with integrity and actually know what they're doing. So if you can get your company bigger and get away from the 90% of the brokers that are just doing it for their second career but don't really understand what they're doing, it would be very helpful. Once I got into this, it's been great because I really feel that I'm helping people maximize their future outcomes. Like that I'm not having them leave any money on the table. And more importantly, for me, my important thing is I don't want seller's remorse. When you're done, I want to say, we got everything we asked for. Everything I needed was accounted for. If I didn't get it, we knew we asked for it and we went as far as we could go. I was educated through the process. I understood with the decisions I made. My eyes were wide open and I feel good about my decision. I don't feel like I had any doubt that we didn't ask for anything we should have or didn't do things we should have done. That was a long-winded answer. Say I just love what I do and I want to help people.
I love it. Well, the first thing is that there's so many contractors out there that think their business is worth millions of dollars. And this is one thing that I do is that, and I really believe in When you start your business, you build to sell. And all that means is we're building it in such a way that we're building in value and value to an outside buyer, value to private equity, value to another business. And this is what it's all about because you got to understand that from day one, you do that. It's like a franchise. You're building out a model that does not rely on you. And this is, it's such a struggle to get contractors to understand that, you know, the business is basically worthless if you can't get away from the business, if everything, all the
Hmm.
decisions go through you and can't walk away. And this is why we start with it's called the 2 week vacation. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I do with the contractors that I work with say, okay, where are you going to go on this 2 week vacation this year? Take your family away 2 weeks. We're going to set this business up so you can do that. And that's one of our goals that we do that. So everybody
Hmm.
gets away. Maybe it's only a week, but we get started. And that business is built around that concept. Um, you mentioned that you were doing various exit plans and so forth
Hmm.
before private equity came in and really kind of took over the market. What were some other options that you saw that worked? And I'm always, yeah, whether you're selling to another company, whether you're trying to bring it down to your kids. Um, what are some of the pros and cons in doing that? Because obviously everyone's not a candidate for private equity.
Correct. Yeah. The way I look at it, and I still look at it this way when I talk to people, is what are your all your options? And let's lay
Mm,
them out. What's the pros and cons of each option? If you have family in the business, are they the right option to hand it off to? Do you have the financial wherewithal that you can gift the business to your kids? Or do you need to sell it to your kids because you haven't taken enough money or you've been reinvesting into the business and you need to have a transaction to pull it out? Now, if you're gonna gift it to kids or you're gonna rely on the kids to provide an income for you after the sale, do you trust that your kids are capable? Are they been trained properly? Do they understand how to handle the good times and the bad times, or are they just following instructions from you? So learning how what the pros and cons of giving it to your kids are and what your options are on a generational transfer. Looking, it could be management. You may have built a great team. It may do exactly what you said, and what you said about the franchise model and being able to take a 2 week vacation. If you only do one thing and focus on making that your modus operandi and running your business, getting it to that point, that solves a lot of problems. It makes planning much easier because almost every
right.
option's on the table. So if you do one thing, do what Dave said: turn your business into a franchise, quotation fingers, or and be able to take that 2 week vacation where the business runs without you. The other thing is, so you can tell it to management team but is your management team willing to step up? And the thing is, you may have a management team that absolutely can run the business, but Dave, you and I know that owning a business and working for a business, even if you have a lot of responsibility within that business, are two different things. You can leave, you can go home at night when you don't own the business and
Right.
have dinner, and the business is still back there. When you own the business, there's a lot more risk. There's a lot more things that go through your mind. It never stops. Um, do you have the mindset to do that? Do you have the mental fortitude in the guts to do that? That's hard to do. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. It takes a certain mindset. But you need to know that can the management team do that before you start going down the path and say, I'm going to definitely sell to them. And then the third thing is, what do you do to maximize the value if you had need to sell it to a third party? And the great thing is you can look at all three of them. How you plan and build your business up doesn't change much based on what those options are.
Right.
It's okay. Let's stack rank the priorities of these options and how we want to go about doing each of these types of transfers, and give yourself maximum latitude of contingencies to come up. Maybe a kid gets hurt on the roof, and you thought he was going to be to take it over, and now he can't. Or now he says, you know what? I don't want to do this.
Right.
Or you bring him into the office and you take him off the roof and he goes, I hate being in the office. I want to be out. I want to be up on top again. You find these things out as you start to go through the process, and the only way to do that is to start to lay it on paper and then have conversations with the people that you're considering to be part of your succession plan. You assume if you do your exit plan, your succession plan in a vacuum, like just with your head and your piece of paper, and sometimes it's not even a piece of paper, it's just in your head. If you're the only one having that conversation with yourself, there's no way of knowing that plan's going to work, and you have no idea if you have buy-in. You need to have buy-in on those plans.
Right.
So those are the things that I look at is let's look at all your different options. What's it going to take to do all this? And what are the hurdles? What are the risks? What are the rewards for each one? And then go down the path that way. Like I said, the good part is 80% of that's going to be covered by if you run your business as a franchise and get the 2 weeks. All those options are available. You just got to figure out which one's best.
Right. Right. I do a lot of business planning, and well, I stole this from Eisenhower, planning for D-Day invasion. And he says, it's not the plan that's important. It's going through the process of planning. And just as you say, it's getting these things on the table and looking at how this actually works. How is this going to happen? And really thinking that through as opposed to just going, business is worth all this money. So I try to do that. It's difficult. It's a lot of work, to
Mm-hmm.
try to run your business this way. But if you don't, it's unlikely that you're going to have a business that has a value that you can sell. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say 90% of these contractors, they get to the end of the road, and there's no value built in, and they
Right.
just end up shutting the doors. Nobody's going to buy it because it all relies on them. What do you have? You got a bunch of, beat up trucks and so forth. Oh my,
Mm-hmm.
I've got this client list. Client list isn't worth squat because these are not repeat customers necessarily. And also, if you're not there, a lot of these guys, they're just going to go to somebody else. You're the reason why they're buying. So we see that a lot. The other thing, two scenarios that I see when it comes to exits. One is, and I like this method, is identifying one or two people in your business that you can train that are interested in running the business, and you can bring them up to a point where you can start taking time off and bring them in this way. And then they can buy you out. And that can work well. But what happens a lot of times is, okay, well, when you put your signature on here and you just pledged your house and everything else to the bank, they're like, "Oh, hold on," and you mentioned
Yeah.
risk. There's so much risk involved in running a roofing business. And you don't really understand that until you really get into it. And you've got all those sleepless nights trying to figure out how you're going to make payroll the next day.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest hurdle on sale to a management team is that risk that they have to take on and them fully understanding that risk. Um, and you're right, you can have the conversations and they can give you all the right answers and you feel like you know where they are. But as soon as they get down and they're with their spouse and their family and like, all right, my house is now at risk. And even though we've always made good money and even
Right.
though the business has always been profitable, what if it isn't this year? Am I going to
Yeah.
lose my house? And having that thought process in your head, and can you work through that? And does that drive you to improve the business and come up with contingency plans to protect the business? Or does it give you that fight or flight where you just
Right.
like, you just shell up or you run because you can't take that pressure? And so a lot of times you don't know it until you have to put your name on that piece of paper saying, I'm guaranteeing the house to
Mhm.
keep this thing running.
Yeah. And are you cut out to be an entrepreneur? And, you and I can take a look at somebody and we can pretty much, you know, size that up because it's like, you really shouldn't be running your own business. You can go make money, great money, selling roofs, working for
Mhm.
somebody else, and you don't have to sweat all this. So,
I
um,
think that's a good point about the entrepreneurial aspect is a lot of times people mistake entrepreneurial as like, oh, is it Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or these guys that come with the next new app.
mm,
I look at entrepreneurship as someone who's willing to look at the market and to look at their customers and say, what do my customers need? What are the needs that are not being addressed? Or what can I do that's better than I was doing yesterday? How can I be more efficient at doing what I'm already doing Though, if you're willing to look at your company and ask those questions, you're an entrepreneur. If you're someone who just says, "I'm going to show up, the phone's going to ring, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to send the crew out," you're not an entrepreneur. You're a caretaker. But if you're thinking about your business proactively, like, what can I do better? How can I serve my clients better? What do they need that we're not doing? If you can ask yourself these questions and figure out how to apply the answers you get, you're an entrepreneur. And it doesn't mean you have to start the next tech startup. You could be running the next great roofing company because you asked those questions.
Hmm. Differentiation. What makes you different than your competitors? What makes you better than your competitors?
Mhm.
And if you're saying, oh, we provide great service, we have fair pricing, come on. That's what everybody says.
Mhm.
You've got to come up with something unique and that's people are interested in, they care about. Now, here's the other scenario that I see, and I'm working with a couple of companies right now. And boy, it's tough. It's really difficult. This is a family business. Okay. Family businesses are really hard. And I think they're even harder to sell unless they're gonna there's all kinds of problems. But first off, you've got the Family Full Employment Act, okay, which means everybody in the family, whether they know what they're doing or not, they're gonna go work in the business. Well, you got to run a business like a football team. Okay.
Mhm.
You are always looking for the best and you're replacing people if you can find somebody better to fill that position, just like the team. You don't make positions for somebody like you would for your kids. Well, we'll figure
Mhm.
out something that he can do. No, you have your positions on your team. Now we're going to go fill the best place, the best people. Rarely is it one of your kids. Okay.
I agree. You know what? One of the best questions I've ever heard with this is if you can ask yourself, if that person didn't have my last name, would I hire them for that position?
Exactly.
Just be honest with yourself. Like, if their name wasn't the name above the door, would I have put them in that position? And if the answer is no, then get them out of that position and put them in a spot where they belong. Or sometimes they might just not belong in the business. The other thing we talk about the Family Full Employment Act is I see is they try to sometimes typically I grew up in an Italian family. Italian families tend to do this. They want everyone to be treated fairly. Um, so everyone gets paid the same and everyone gets
Right.
overpaid. Or maybe they all get underpaid, but usually they all get paid the same. I'm like, but you know what? Then you actually don't know what it costs to really run your business because you have
Right.
12 brothers and sisters and cousins throughout the business. They're all getting paid the same amount of money, but like, as if one of them's a top salesperson, one's the bottom salesperson, one's a crew chief, one's in the billing department, one's running the shipping and receiving, in the warehouse. Um, they're all different roles, and in the market, you don't pay the same for a below average or average or above average. And so you have different values for each position, and then you have different values based on how good you are at those positions. And they're very rarely the same. What I typically see is family members get treating the same. And so when you go to figure out what the business is worth, I'm like, I don't know, we got to redo like 12 different salaries to figure out
Right.
what the real profitability is going to be. Because when mom and dad or uncle or aunt aren't running anymore, these people tend to go away because they don't like working for someone who's not their family. And
Right.
that when a private equity firm's looking at that, that's the first thing I do is what is the real cost to run this business? It's great, it's working, but this isn't the real cost. What's it really cost to run this business? And what's my real profitability? What's my real cash flow? So having family members, it's a blessing and it's a curse. It's a blessing if you're never going to get rid of the business.
Right.
But it's a curse if you want to sell. It's also a curse if your family members start to get bigger and bigger and they start to not get along. And then not only does it ruin your business, it ruins your Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this is the true, how do you make a small fortune? Start with a big one because they're going to tear each other apart. Every time I see this. And what happens is when the um the father decides to get out, well, that iron fist is gone. So now everybody's fighting among themselves. There's nobody to hold this thing together. Now, I grew up in a family business. Interesting. I mean, my story is pretty crazy, but I had planned and going into this is small, struggling roofing business. And but I always wanted to go into the business. I loved it and went to business school, the whole thing, and I'm ready to go in here. Well, turns out my older brother who was a music major, he decides he wants to come in here because he can't find a job. So he comes in, and now he's the older brother. So he's the president. I'm working for him. I go, well, he doesn't know anything about it. What the hell does that have to do with it? So that whole thing was going on. So I ended up having to buy him out. It's a mess because you don't have um, the proper buy sell agreements and so
Right.
forth. So when you do split up, it's a cluster, and it's really tough. And then you get the father that wants to go sit on the beach, and make all and have this great lifestyle. Well, now you've got a non-working guy who was really a big driver, and you've got that cost of supporting him forever. And that's what they think they should be doing is, hey, I did all the work. I built this company. I want to get out of here. You guys run it, and I want a shitload of money. Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. You can't survive in that
Right.
type of business. So anyway, those are a couple that are a mess, because I work with these companies all the time. My job is to put them in a position where they have options. And that's why we
Hmm.
say we build to sell. You can do anything you want, but you're always building this business, and it's building it the correct way. It's having the right positions. It's
Yes.
removing yourself. What I found, I took a lot of time off myself, and I actually uh, I had a business coach come in, made all the difference in the world, and we built this thing out together. So I spent a lot of time away. And what it does, it gets you to the point where you've got those right positions in there and you've got the right people. And by you leaving, that gives them a chance to take the responsibility, to be held accountable for it, and to see if they can really do it. And if they can't, you're going to find out. So I want to be able to step back, and that's where real value was created. So anyway,
I'll put on the point about a business coach. I think that's a really good point you bring up there. The companies that I work with that tend to do better than the average work with coaches. And if they're not working with coaches, they have an independent advisory board with people that
right.
are not in the business every day and can look at things more objectively and can help hold you accountable. And I think that's what the value of a business coach is. And like the roofing company I sold right before we talked last time, when I started talking to him, he started saying things, and I asked him, I said, "Do you have a business coach?" And he said, "Yes." And I'm like, I can tell
Yeah.
because you're being honest with yourself. You're not like serving yourself your own meal and saying how great it is. You're sitting going, this isn't good, or could be better. Help me.
Hmm.
What am I missing? Help me be objective. Okay, I'm going to commit to this. Hold me accountable. Don't let me just get away with saying things and not following through. And it's easy to do when you own the company or the general manager's like, you can come up with ideas, but then when push comes to shove and you get busy, that's a tomorrow thing. And
Yeah.
it kind of addresses that thing you also talked about in the planning. It is hard to plan and it's hard to think that way. But once you do it and you start to see the benefits and you start to say, okay, I'm not starting from scratch more. I'm just modifying based on new information. It becomes much easier. And then as it gets easier, you'll notice not only is the planning easier, running the business is easier because you're putting the work in the right spots with the right people. You're holding them, you're giving them responsibility, you're holding them accountable. And as you do that, they start to take more and more responsibility. They take pride in what they're doing, and it takes more and more pressure off of you,
Hmm. I look at
which
it
makes
like
it
you're
more sellable.
yeah. I look at it like you're climbing a mountain, okay? Hey, guys, see that mountain over there? You know, I've done this before. I'm a, proven guide. I'm going to show you the best way and the most efficient way to get there. So let's everybody get in line. And what happens is, if they don't have somebody guiding them as like a business coach, you start wandering off, and now the next thing you know, you're lost in the bushes and so on and so forth. And that's where a coach really comes in, which is exactly as you say, holding them accountable, holding their feet to the fire to accomplish the goals that we've set out and make sure that they're on track to do that. And it, it's you got these guys have a lot of big egos. I say, if we're going to do this, leave your ego at the door, and let's get down and make some real progress here, because get stuck in the mud, we can push you along and get you to where your goals are. And also, I'm someone that really has to talk things through. So I want to have a sounding board, and I come up with these what seem to be great ideas, and then I talk them through and I go, I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's a stupid idea. And otherwise, you're just on your own. You're trying to, who knows? So anyway, that's all good stuff. So yeah, it's not easy. There are a number of options to sell your company, but each one of these you have to really think it through. And that family business, man, it's a tough deal. And I know so many family businesses that have just destroyed themselves because there never was that planning. And whether it's the roofing business or any type of business. And a lot of times the father is just not, let's say, just doesn't have the balls to really set this thing up correctly, put the
Hmm.
best people in, and figure this out. He says, hey, everybody's going to get along. It's a big kumbaya. Hey, as soon as he dies, man, it's freaking bloodbath. I've
Hmm.
seen it so many times. So,
Yeah. Exactly. Like, well, there's a big vacuum where like everyone takes it for granted that things are getting done, not realizing someone's actually making that stuff happen.
yeah.
And and the more that you just rely on certain the owner, the dad, the mom who's running the business, they're just taking care of things, and no one knows they're just taking care of it because it's they try to make everything easier for everybody. They're gone. No one knows what to do. They don't even know how to figure it out. Which goes back to that coaching model you talked about. Is I look at it as like I like to golf. I was going to use other sports, but I haven't been an athlete in
Mhm.
a long time. But I play golf now. You can figure stuff out. Like I could go there and I can go to the range, I can practice, and I can figure out why am I like top of the ball, why am I pushing it right, why am I hitting stuff short. And I can go to the range and figure. I'm like, oh, I see what I'm doing, and do trial and error. And as long as I'm getting feedback and I'm trying to train right, but it's going to be slow and steady. Versus you
Mhm.
get next to a pro and says, I'm pushing this thing right way too often. What am I doing? You take a few swings, it's like, yeah, this is what you're doing with your takeaway and your back shoulder. Practice this. Practice
Mhm.
before we come back. And then he goes, okay, you fixed that. And he goes, oh, you know what? Now that we fixed that, I see we could tweak this. This will help your distance control. Like,
Yeah.
would I have got there? Maybe it might have taken a year or 2 years through trial and error. And I don't know what fix made. I just all of a sudden it's better. Or I can have a pro show me in 2, 3 straight weeks and practice it and get there within a month. I mean,
Mhm.
that's where a business coach comes in is that you don't have to do the trial. They understand what works and what doesn't work, and they can pick and choose which topics or which management theories or which business issues you need to address first because that's going to be the biggest impact. Or you have the skill set to do it much quickly and get the results and get the confidence to keep building upon it.
Mhm. And golf's a great example of how you learn. What's the best way for you to learn? Because I want to go out there, I want to have a good time. I don't want to screw around. It's so frustrating to begin with, it drives me nuts. But there's a number of ways I can do it. I can go watch YouTube videos. Okay. And this falls back into roofing schools and so forth and all the available stuff that's out there because it's all out there. I mean, but it depends the way how you learn. If you can do that and make it work, it's great. Okay. Or you can go to a group class. Okay. Group class, that can work too. You're not going to have that one on one. And that kind of falls into that category of, all those seminar manuals that I've got over there collecting dust, where you go and you get all jazzed up, but you really don't have that um, individual help. And then you've got one on one. And that I want to get to point A to point B quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to make it happen, and I want to have the focus on me, and that's exactly what one-on-one golfing does. Have a pro,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. So, anyway, okay, let's get into private equity. Let's
Yep.
talk about what's going on because everybody's talking about this. Um, what makes a business valuable? What are the things that they're looking for and not looking for that are going to prevent you from doing this? And we had a great conversation the last time. I really enjoyed doing this because it just really comes down to basic business building. You want to build a good business. And private equity, they want to buy a good business because they want to reduce the risk. They want to be able to get you out of there, for instance, and have this thing running where they can bring in professional management, they can roll it up, whatever they want to do. But you just have more options. So let's talk about, God, how do we even start with this? But let's start with what's going on these days. I got to think at some point they're going to run out of good companies to buy, to roll up, because there's so many guys involved with this business, and they're picking these companies up, and there's just not that many well-run businesses in the roofing industry. What's happening now?
Yeah, I see what you're saying is I don't have the exact stats, but my conversations with the buyers that are reaching out to me now, like not the buyers, the sellers that are reaching out to me. Actually, I should say the buyers. I do talk to private equity firms, a bunch of them on a quarterly basis to see what's going on. Uh, it is harder to find those great businesses to buy. And when they first get into the space, a lot of times the bright line to start acquiring companies, you had to have at least 5 million of EBITDA, which probably meant you had 25 or 30 million of revenue, as long as you had the proper margins all the way
Let
down.
me let me jump back on that. Can you explain what EBITDA is
Sure.
for our listeners, and and it's a I think it's kind of a difficult concept for a lot of people to understand.
It's the simplest way to say it, and this isn't 100% accurate, but it's the easiest way to understand it. It's how cash profitable your company is. Is it exactly that? No. But that's basically how much cash are you generating from your operations, because it takes your net income, how much money you're making, and it backs out non-cash items that hit your expense. Like if you have depreciation, you're not writing a check for depreciation. But it's an expense.
Mhm.
So you're making adjustments for that. Um, and you're making adjustments for a couple other things. But it's basically what is your true cash flow for operating the business. Um, so that's the basis point. Someone says that's not perfect. You should use cash flow. Well, we use the EBITDA instead of cash flow because it's consistent from industry to industry, and
Right.
most of the valuation metrics are based off of EBITDA. That what happens is I think everyone starts with EBITDA, and then they'll make their own adjustments for their own personal risk factors. Buyers will do it, sellers will do it. Say, what am I willing to pay? What am I willing to accept? But EBITDA is what is your company generating for cash through its operations?
It's making money.
Making
That's you got to be making
and it's
profit.
cash money. It's cash money, not paper money.
Yep. Right. And this is what you want to focus on. It's not the top line sales necessarily. The, you know, y- and I see so many companies that are, that's all they focus on because they want to bang their chest and say, "Hey, I'm doing $20 million. I don't make any money, but I'm doing $20 million in sales volume." That doesn't mean squat. Am I right about this?
100%. Anybody can grow if you're willing to cut your prices, but that's
Hmm.
not a value proposition. That's not a barrier to entry. Cutting your prices, anybody else can do that too, and no one wins if the only way to win is being the absolute low cost provider. If
Right.
you can sell, and the ones that I've had the most success with, uh, their value proposition isn't they're the low cost. They're fairly priced, but they're not the low price. They provide um, much higher quality. They provide much better customer service along the way. And that's not just that we say we do it. They actually have dedicated touch points. We have when you make the first sale. You have the follow up once you sign the contract. You have the follow up a week before it's scheduled. They have the follow up when the people are there. Is everything going the way it's supposed to be? They have the follow up after it's done. Is there anything that we missed that we should come back? Like they have built in steps to actually create a customer service culture. That's the value add proposition. Um, so the companies that have that make it easy to do business with have customer service built into their infrastructure, not just saying it, they do it.
Hmm.
Those companies get sold because they don't have to sell as much because they can sell maybe 5, 10, 15% more because people are buying the quality. They're buying the reassurance that the job's done right. And if something goes wrong, I know they're going to take care of me.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's not growing. It's not just growing the top line. Growing helps. It shows that the
sure.
business has opportunity to expand. But if it doesn't go to the bottom line, it doesn't turn into cash, doesn't turn into making money. Um, that's not something that a private equity firm or any kind of rational investor or buyer is going to want to invest in.
Mhm. We're talking about systems and processes because they're repeatable. Um, and I use the example of McDonald's. Okay. You know, you're going to make a burger. Okay. They've got these standard operating procedures manuals that are, 8 inches thick. And it tells you where to put the pickle and how much ketchup and everything. I mean, it is just totally laid out. And so you can bring in new people and you can get them up to speed very easily. So it's that franchise model that I think is important, which I always forget to ask you this question because franchising in the roofing industry, which to me, I don't know, I don't get it. But what's going on with that? And what do you think? Because I'm working with a number of franchises, which is really interesting. So I'm really kind of able to get in and see what the hell's going on with these things. But you've got, Mighty Dog, you've got Honest Abe's, there's a number of them. And these things are really growing. And what I find is that most of the people that are buying these things totally, I mean, some guys are chemists, some guys are marketing guys. They know nothing about the roofing industry, but they're like, hey, I'm going to come in and do this. I've always wanted to have a home service business. Screw that, man. Go buy a Subway franchise.
Yeah,
It's a hell of a lot
yeah.
easier. What do you think? What's going on about these things? And what's the
I'll be
deal?
honest with you. I don't have a ton of experience working with the roofing franchises, but I would agree with you. I could see it being appealing to someone who says, okay, I see how home service is the next hot space. If you go through Twitter and you look at the
Right.
SMB space on Twitter, everyone's talking about home services, home services, home services. It is hot and it is, and there is a lot of value there to be had. But, um, it doesn't mean everyone can be successful, and it doesn't mean every franchise model is the right fit. And a franchise, if you don't know emotionally what it means to get up on the roof, and you don't know emotionally what it means for someone to sell that $20,000, $30,000 roof to a homeowner, that's a big check that you can't put it under insurance. You can't make a claim for. You got to write that check. Um, that's different than just saying, "Oh, I'm going to follow a model." Like there's some emotion involved in that, even though there's a process involved. Where I see and I don't know this for sure, but where I would see a franchise model properly that could work, practically could work, is if you mentioned earlier someone's coming from the truck, they're coming off the roof, and they say, "I want an opportunity to run," but they don't know the back office
Right.
systems.
Right.
I see that as like, okay, I know how to deliver this stuff. But the business aspect of it, like building the manuals and the procedures and the steps, I see that as being really valuable.
Yeah.
Having someone as an outsider come in and not knowing actually how to do the work and having to try to hire people and trying to say, oh, is this person really going to provide high quality roof? Can this person go out and sell this? Like, and not being in the business, I don't know how you know that. Like, I
Mhm.
sell businesses in the roofing space, but I don't think I could run a roofing company. I mean, I'm good at selling businesses. I'm not good at running those types of businesses.
Right.
And I think sometimes these franchise models like convince people who aren't in the space that yeah, you can run that because we have all the systems. I'm like, yeah, you have the business systems, which is extremely important, but you still need the industry and the
Mhm.
technical experience as well.
Yeah, I did it for 30 years, man. It's not easy, I'll tell you. It's
No.
tough. But this is where the three-legged stool comes back. It comes in because you're right, comes up through the trade, and they don't have that business understanding. And that's why I always talk about they don't understand the business end of the roofing business. And that's what they've got to learn because you could be putting on roofs or selling shoes. It doesn't matter. It's a business. And you have to have that mindset that you're running a business. You got to have a profitable business. So you've got to be able to sell. A lot of guys come up on the roof, they don't know how to sell. They know how to put roofs on. Well, That's just one factor. But understanding that business end is so important. And you're right. That's one way to do it is to buy into one of these franchises because they have it all set up for you, theoretically,
Mhm.
and it's somewhat of a plug and play. Now, the thing is, they're going to charge 200 grand, 250 grand to do that. Plus, you're going to be paying them a royalty of 12%, every year. How do you make any money doing that? And so few of these guys do. So rather than giving them the 250 grand, for 20 grand, I can set up all those systems,
Yeah,
get everything dialed in and do it better. This is the
yeah.
part. It's crazy.
The
So,
the, the non-retail franchises are difficult because like, if you buy a McDonald's, you buy a Dunkin' Donuts or Subway,
mhm,
you put the name up, people know to go there and buy the
right,
stuff.
right,
You put a name up for anything else, you're buying the trade name or the trademark doesn't sell as much. And unless that trademark that organization says, for getting our franchise, we're going to supply you X amount of leads every single month. Maybe that royalty starts to make a difference because it's a commission versus a royalty just to
right.
have the business systems. But yeah, I agree. If you unless the organization by putting their name up and them generating leads, it might be better. I think to what you're saying is understand the business, understand how to sell. If you can understand how to sell in your business and you understand how to deliver in your business, using the franchise tools or a
Right.
business coach to put in the franchise model makes a lot of sense because that's the part that most people miss. You see, when I see business owners, like they're great salespeople, so they go, "I'm going to go start a company," and then all of a
Mhm,
sudden, the greatest salesperson ever starts running a company, and like it goes bankrupt. They're making tons of sales, but they don't know how to make a profitable sale
mhm,
and
mhm.
they ignore everything that's not about sales. If you talk to a person who's straight from the roof or and is technical, everything's about it's got to be perfect, highest quality. We're not thinking about okay, how do we do the right amount of quality for the price that someone will accept? Like, yeah, we can do a fortified roof that will never have to be replaced, but we're gonna have to charge like $400,000 for that. No
Mhm.
one's gonna buy it. So you
Right.
got to figure out what's the balance between the highest amount of quality versus what the market will bear, and how do you then sell that? And then after that, those are the two parts that usually fight, and both of them say don't understand how do you do all the other aspects of the business to make sure it's repeatable and everything that's supposed to get done gets done. It gets scheduled. The inventory is where it's supposed to be. The bills get paid when they're supposed to be paid. The people are properly documented. You're not breaking any laws. You have insurance to cover for any risk. Like all that
Yep.
stuff, those two groups tend to ignore because it's not what they're focused on. It's not what their expertise is in.
Well, that's why 80% of the roofing business go out of business within the first 5 years. It's a lot more difficult than you think. But let's get into, okay, I'm building my business. I want to be in that position where I can go sell my business for millions of dollars and go walk into the sunset and hang out at the beach. So, what are some of the things that they're looking for? What adds value to a business? So we should start building this now because it really does take about 5 years to get your business into a saleable condition, I think, is what I find. What do you think about that?
3 to 5 years, I think, is a good time frame.
Mhm.
Um, Anything shorter than that, I don't want to go as far to say you're putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah,
Um, but 3 to 5 years, you can make meaningful, foundational, sustainable changes. Things that are really important is building an infrastructure that can support growth. And I was saying earlier, anyone can grow fast by cutting prices. But if you really want to have a business that's growing. A business that's growing will generate more value.
right.
Companies that are growing 10% per year, better than the industry, get a 25 to 30% premium over companies who are just average. But growing doesn't mean just top line. Your bottom line has to grow at least as quick as the top line, but more probably honestly, it's got to go faster because if you're selling $1 million now and you have a 30% margin, that means you have 300,000 in gross profit and you have 200,000 in overhead. So that means you're making a million. 300,000 of gross profit, less 200,000 of overhead, you're making $100,000. It's a 10% profit margin.
Right.
Well, you don't want to be 2,600,000, 200,000. They what an investor wants to see is you went from 1 million to 2 million. You've got some efficiency, so now your margin's not 600,000, it's 650, and your overhead didn't go from 200 to 400. It only went to 300.
Right.
So you're leveraging resources within your delivery systems, and you're leveraging the overhead so that your bottom line is going faster than your top line. And if you can do that, you write your ticket. And those are the companies that are getting acquired. And we talked earlier, what's a little bit different in the PA space, because it's harder companies to find, they're going down market. What they're also finding is that they're down market for a reason. They're not doing the things they're supposed to do, and it's harder to uncover these diamonds in the rough that are going to be that $5 million EBITDA company, but we're finding them 2 or 3 years earlier. You got to be able to put that infrastructure in place, that franchise model in place, so that you can create sustainable growth and not have it fall apart and break apart as you get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's building the foundation, and this is where
Which is different. We're talking roofing, but we got to focus on the foundation first.
exactly, and we're not building a house of cards, okay, that it doesn't have the sustainability. So the first thing we've got to do is build out that foundation that can support that growth. But, you know, you don't grow a business to make money. You make money so you can grow a business. And you've got to be able to do that first. And it's boring, it really is. This is one of the big problems that, why I'll tell this story. Hey, I ain't selling a bunch of books and seminars, it's the guys that are saying, hey, let me show you how to 20x your business and so forth. This is the boring stuff. It's the basic blocking and tackling that wins games. But you've got to have that solid infrastructure, the strong foundation first, then you can build on that. You can grow your business. You can put all these things into place, and you can really start kicking some ass. And so that's the way I see it. So, what are some things that we can do that are going to add value? What are some other things that are going to take value away? And we talked about a number of those things already.
The biggest thing I'm seeing right now, particularly in the roofer space, is you have to have W-2 employees.
Yes.
I mean, if you do not, I hate saying own employees, you don't own. If your employees aren't on your payroll register, that's going to hurt value. I've seen a couple places where it's like a onesie, twosie. Yeah, you can get away with that because you're the guy that's been in the industry for 40 years and he's doing the sales. He doesn't want to come on the payroll, and he's got his one-off deal and he works when he wants to work, or he works overfull. Fine. I'm not going to beat you up over that. But I've seen companies that say, I'm just hiring all my salespeople. They're all 1099. I'm going to pay them all commission. And I'm being told, and this is companies that were turned away by private equity. They were very interested. And then the private equity saw they were all 1099 salespeople, 1099 contractors on the roof. Said, yeah, we're not buying this company. You don't have anything. And he said, and no, oh, by the way, even if you did say they're loyal to me, you're not following the law, which means you have all this liability that's going to trail along, and either you got to pass it on to the buyer, and the buyer's not going to take it.
Right.
Or you got to cover that liability either through an insurance policy or through a big escrow, and which means you may not see any of your money until all those liabilities go away and resolve, so that the seller knows that the buyer, knows when they buy this business and this asset, they don't have to give any money back because of all these illegalities that are happening. And I will say, I've heard people say, everyone's doing it, so I got to do it to compete. I'm like, I'll tell you right now, not everyone's doing it. The ones that are getting sold and the ones that are making a lot of money have W-2 employees, and they do e-verification. All their employees are documented and legal. That doesn't mean that they're U.S. citizens, but they have the proper paperwork. They're documented. They're legally following the process. So I hate when I hear everyone's doing it. That's why I have to do it. Right. No, if you're going to do it right. Those and if you're going to sell, do it and do it right, because the people writing the big checks don't want any of this liability.
Mm-hmm. I had close to 100 employees. They were all W-2, everybody. And also because if you've got a labor force, a trained, qualified labor force that's going to stay there after you're gone, for instance, that can that has some real value because it's so hard to find qualified labor these days that aren't a sub crew. I mean, that's one thing you can go out and find, you know, a crew of guys, but there is no value in that. So having that trained workforce, particularly when it came to service department, is what we did. We were in commercial business. I mean, that's got value. And that's how you want to build your business out. You want to build, that's um, solid people that are going to stay, that are trained, that safety, all of these things. And it's just if you've got W-2s and you're working just like a as everything's subbed out, there's no value. What are you
Mhm.
buying?
Nothing. I mean, but I also look at it this way too: is if you're selling your company, you have a brand name and a reputation. If the people aren't part of your company, how do you not like? It's Dave Sullivan Roofing, the Dave Sullivan way. We do it better because we have the Dave Sullivan way. How do you know you're doing the Dave Sullivan way if you have a bunch of different contractors coming in and out? Like, how are they trained? Are they being trained the same way? Are they being supervised the same way on every single job? Are they getting held accountable for quality the same way in every single job? Maybe you can do it with a sub, and I'm sure this guy is going to raise their hand and say, "Yeah, that's how we do it. We quality control all of our subs." I would say maybe, but it's much easier when they're all on your team and they're all on your payroll.
Mhm.
And by the way,
Okay.
again, I'll
Hmm?
say it again: the investors are not going to take that liability because it's illegal.
Right. Right. So when we're building these companies out, these are things to think about because you're building a real business. Now, if all you get is 1099 guys and so forth, hey, that's fine. You kind of got a job and a little business and so forth, but you're never going to be in a position where somebody's going to want to buy it.
Hmm.
Um, so you really have to build that out. Same with your salespeople. Um, Oh man, I forgot what my other point was of building value. But anyway, let's talk about some other things. What else can we do?
I would say show a profit, and it sounds and it's what it sounds like, but it's more than that. A lot of people use their business as a personal piggy bank.
That was what I was going to bring up. Yes.
Um, yes, as a M&A advisor, they say, well, you can do ad backs. Yes, I'm going to do ad backs.
Right.
And there's a lot of legitimate ad backs. And what I love when I like when I see ad backs that are just one-time expenses, like, hey, yeah, we expanded in this new market. We had to do all this cash outlay to build up a new sales office or a new distribution center so we could expand our service. Well, that's a one-time cost. I'm going to add that back every day, every year. And I shouldn't say every because if it's every year, it's not add back. But every time I see a one-time investment, that's not going on the balance sheet that I can pull out, I'll absolutely do that. But if I'm pulling out that you're giving a car allowance to three kids that aren't in the business, and you have no-show jobs to your brother-in-law just to help out because you want to make sure your sister's taken care of, but the person doesn't do any work, and you have your significant other spouse getting paid.
You got your
Um,
slush fund that
you get your
seems to
slush
go
fund. You
up
get
every time you get paid cash.
every bit of travel. And I'm not saying that you can't have business travel, but like every vacation you go on is a business travel. Um, it starts to be difficult. So I tell people this: you cannot you cannot have ad backs be the only way to profitability. If you're breaking even and the only way to show profit is through ad backs, it's a difficult sale. Can we do it? And will brokers do that? Will advisors do that? Yes. But the companies that actually show real paper profit, where the profit is 80, 90% of what shows up in your EBITDA, those are the companies that get sold. If you're breaking even and then you're making $1 million through ad backs,
Mhm.
that's a tough sell to someone. Like, okay, because they never know if it's really going to go away. So make sure your books are clean. And I use this example, like I pay your for 3 to 5 years. Well, you should always properly pay your tax. I hate paying taxes. I don't want to pay a penny more than I absolutely owe, but I
Mhm.
follow the law and the rules to do it right. Um, but if you've been doing some of the slush fund stuff for 3 to 5 years, clean up your books, do it right. And I look at it this way: if you're making $100,000 of slush fund personal stuff that shouldn't be going to business, what are you saving? 30,000 in taxes?
Right.
If your
Mhm.
company can get a 6x multiple on the 100,000 that's personal expenses, that's 600,000.
Yep.
So 600,000. So that means you could pay to add the 30,000 taxes for 20 years to
Right.
break even. So if you want to pay taxes for 3 years, you're paying $90,000. You pay it for 5 years, you're paying $150,000 of taxes that you probably wouldn't have spent if you were pushing your personal expenses through.
Mhm.
But you got 600,000. You made a profit by paying taxes.
Right. And this is building a business of value that you can sell, as opposed to really, I call it the old school, and like I deal with a lot of the old the father that wants to get out. Well, it's so much crap, they used to do, a long
Hmm.
time ago. Okay. And that was the whole thing. How much cash can I take out? Well, now it's a different story. If this is what we're trying to do, if we're trying to build a business of value that we can sell, that private equity would be interested in, that you can actually sell a business and retire and have some money, where you
Hmm.
can go and do that. So okay, so I've got my great, well-run business. Oh, no, just real quick. I think having a good set of books that makes sense also. And I'll look at some of these financial statements and I'm looking at this. I don't know what the hell's going on, man. And I look at this stuff every day. So you want to have good, well organized books that people can see that you're making money. And you want to have, like, as you say, a good 3 to 5 years of that, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And they need to be really simple and easy to understand. Like a business shouldn't be that difficult to figure out how profitable it is. If you have to, you should be able to give me a set of financials and I can say, I see what this business is doing. It makes money. I can see how it's making money.
Right.
If you have to give me a financials and say, okay, let me talk you through where everything is so I can prove to it. If the financial statement itself doesn't prove to me that you're making money, that you have to explain to me why you're making money, even though this says you're not, that's a difficult business to sell. Like when you have to hear, you got to understand. Well, what you don't know is, if you got to keep saying that, your business is going to be difficult to sell.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So I've got this well-run business. I think it's worth, it has value. I've been doing all the things that we're talking about. So what is it worth? And do I just get bags of cash and walk away and that's all there is to it?
Um, what it's worth is based on what the market's willing to pay.
Mhm.
Uh, and size does matter. If you have less than $1 million of EBITDA, the range of multiples is lower than companies that have EBITDA between 1 million and 5 million. So say, and these are not direct numbers, but I'm for directional. I'm going to say, if you're making less than $1 million in EBITDA, your multiples might be 3 or 4x. Four is a great. 4x means 4 times your profit.
Yeah, tell us
3x
what
means
that is.
so if a multiple is a lot of businesses, the starting point to figure out how much business is worth is you're taking the industry multiple times your EBITDA, your how much cash you're making. Um, so if you're making less than $1 million, and let's just use 1 million to make it easy, you might get 3 to 4 times 1 million. So your business might be worth 3 to 4 times, and that's as long as it's showing it's doing all the other things and it's being well run.
So that's $3 to $4 million.
Yes. If you're
Mhm.
going from like four to in the million to 5 million range, the multiples might be 4 to 5. If you get above 5 million in EBITDA, the multiples might start, and particularly if you can get private equity involved, the multiples now become maybe 5.5 to 7.5 or 8. And They go, great, that's a big range. Like, so if I have a $5 million business, 5 times 5 is 25, 8 times that's 40. How can that be? How well is your business run? Do you have 1099s or you have W-2s?
Right.
Are you growing fast in the industry? Or are you growing at industry average? Have your expenses been controlled where your top line and your margins are expanding and your overhead is staying fairly steady? Do you have a next layer of management? Are you integral to the business, or does your management team run the business? That's where you get the variation between the multiples. Is well-run businesses with processes and next level of management that can run the business and have the relationships with customers and employees besides the owner get the higher multiples. Now, that those things I just explained
Mhm.
also determine, do you get a bag of cash at close or do you get other stuff? The more the more well run your business is, the easier it is to run as a standalone, whether you're there or not, the more likely it is you're going to get a bag of cash and walk away. Because if you could just hand the keys over and someone else can run it, it's going to do the exact same thing. Yeah, there's a higher chance of you getting a bag of cash. The more that the business is dependent on you, or the more risky it is for the transfer that it's going to continue to perform the way it did before, after the transaction as it did before, the more they're going to put deferred payments in there. They're going to cover their risk. They might say, I need an earnout, meaning I'll give you $15 million for your business, but I'm afraid if you go away, we're going to lose 20% of the employees, and we're going to lose these sales because these are all relationships for you. Well, if that's the case, it's like, I'll pay you the 15, but I need to see the revenue is going to at least grow at the same rate as it did the year before. If it does, I'll give you the rest. I'll give you 12 million now, and I'll give you 3 million at the end of the year.
Mhm.
But now you're at risk of having the business perform the same way as it did before and after. When you're in private equity, they want you to have skin in the game, and if they want you to be part of the management team, they're going to want to make sure that you're aligned with them. So they might say, "I'll give you a $15 million offer, but they'll give you maybe 12 at close, $1 million of an earnout, and maybe $2 million in rollover equity, or they'll take 20% of your proceeds and have you buy into the new company. So now you own 20%
Right.
of the bigger organization, or you don't own 20%. You own a smaller percentage using 20% of your proceeds. So you may own like 1% of the bigger company now. But when they go to sell the business, you get paid whatever multiple they can get. So you sold your company for a 6 multiple. They might sell their company for 10 or 12 because they're selling a company with 50 million of EBITDA or 100 million of EBITDA.
If they
So
do.
if they do, that's their plan. That's usually their plan.
Right.
There are a few that have long-term holds, like there's one down in North Carolina. I know that they have a long-term hold play, but a lot of them have a 3 to 5, 7 year outlook where they want to sell it. But that's where it looks like. The more your business stands alone, the more likely you get cash at close. The more risky it is, um, they're gonna put earnouts or rollover stock to make sure that that you have alignment with them, and that they only pay it out if the business performs the same or better after the close.
Tell me about, you're becoming a partner with this new firm, okay? And there's good ones and there's bad ones. And some people have some real regrets and feel it was just a bad experience.
Yes.
Um, Tell me about that, because it's just not, it's like any partners, any marriage, whatever.
Yes.
If they're not aligned with your values in
Hmm.
most cases, it may not work out.
Yeah. If you're staying on, well, no, if you're staying on, or there's a deferral in payments, you really need to do it's reverse diligence. Like, if they're just going to write you a check and they have no obligation, and you don't care about how they treat your employees afterwards,
Mhm.
just sell
Right.
it to them, take your cash, and whatever happens, happens. Most people aren't like that, and most situations aren't where you're always going to get 100% cash. So you need to do reverse diligence. And what I mean by reverse diligence is, if they're a really transparent organization that they're going to be a good partner, you'll say, "Hey, Dave, I've seen you've bought 10 other companies. Can we talk to the people that you previously bought?" If they say, "Well, no,
Right.
no, we don't want to do that," I'm
Mhm.
like, "Well, wait a second." If they say, "Yeah, here's the list, call whoever you want." And so you say, and the ones that do really well, let you call them, and what you do is, and this is it's an easy little checklist. I'll help you do it if you hire me, but here's what you do if you don't. You call them up and say, "Hey, Dave, I saw you got bought by ABC Private Equity. What did they offer you originally? Don't give me the dollars, but when they offered it to you, did they change the offer at all?
Mm-hmm.
No, they didn't. What they said, what the offer was, that's what we closed on. They promised, did they make any promises to you on how the business is going to be run, how they're going to treat your employees before the close? And they said yes. I'm like, how did they fulfill those promises after the close? Oh, they did X, Y, and Z. There's a couple things they did differently, but I wasn't happy with. But after talking through it, it actually ended up being the right thing. I'm like, okay, great. Did you have an earnout? Yeah. Did they cheat you out of the earnout? Did they make it easy to earn it? Were they transparent? Did they make? Did you understand exactly what it had to do to earn it? No, I was kind of confused, and we kind of missed it. We didn't get paid. And like, and if you get more and more of that stuff, it's like, well, you know what? They're making
Mm-hmm.
promises not going to fill. If they say, oh no, they gave us this earnout. The targets are really clear. Um, we were struggling, and they actually worked with us to help us get back on track so we could earn our earnout. They were very helpful in providing support to get there. I'm like, well, that's a partner you want because they're not trying to not pay it to you. They're helping you pay it out. So these are the types of questions you can ask, and you figure out how did they handle these situations with other people. I mean, this doesn't mean they're always going to act the exact same way, but if you have a history of how they make promises and how they work to fulfill those promises, that gives you a good idea on how you can they're going to be afterwards. Just like if you're dating someone, you're like they're great
Yeah.
with you, but then you're at a restaurant and they treat the wait staff like like
Yeah.
crap. You're like, well, is this person, are they going to eventually turn on me? So you can see how people how they treat other people,
Right.
and you get that
Right.
that history, and you owe it to yourself to do that reverse diligence. And if they won't let you do it, that's a red flag.
Mhm. I have one last question, and I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
I love this stuff, man. I could talk to you all day, Greg. We've got so many guys and some of these larger companies and the ones with high growth, um, the ones that tend to be, banging their chest. Look at me, I'm the man. Um, we're talking retail versus insurance. Now, the insurance business is where so many guys come from. I mean, and some of these companies. What's the deal with that? What's the value? Does anybody want an insurance company? To me, there's so much risk with the changes that are happening with the insurance companies, but also it's not something that you can, rely on.
I would
Seems to me. What do you think?
I would from what I've seen, where the interest is, there are some roll-ups that are just after storm chasers, the insurance plays.
Mhm.
But the majority of the ones that are paying better multiples, are really looking at that home service, residential retail. Because
Mhm.
if you could show growth through that, and if you're showing growth through residential retail, it means you have good processes, you have good, well-trained salespeople that have that good close rates, you have marketing that generates consistent leads, you have customer service and quality of how you deliver your product so that you can keep sustaining that. Those tend to be more valuable. I have seen a couple places where instances where they have kind of mixed the two and they try to train the insurance companies that they're in the portfolio how to do retail, and then they try to teach
All
the
right.
retail how to do the insurance. I found that it's easier to train a retail person to go be a storm chaser than to teach a storm
Yeah.
chaser to actually
Yeah.
put processes into retail. So my feeling is, if you can grow your business through residential retail,
Mhm.
you have more options and more opportunities.
It's a more predictable model,
Mhm.
I think, and that's
Right. The
what
lower the
makes it.
risk, the better the value.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's weird. Like, even though the customers are zero, you start at zero every day. The way I think the private equity looks at it is, roofs need to be replaced every 20 to 25 years. So 4 to 5% of the market needs new roofs. Then it's
Right.
your job. How do I get as much of that 4% in my market every single year?
What should they do to get hold of you? And if they have some interest in this or having their company somewhat evaluated, what's the
Sure.
deal?
Easiest way is, I can actually, you can see my company name right there in the skyline. It's That's my website, catapultadvisorgroup.com. and then go to the about page or the contact page, and you can just reach out to me. I'm willing to talk to anybody to if they're starting to think about this process. It doesn't cost anything to have the first conversation and probably even the second conversation. I want to make sure that you understand the people out there understand what it's going to take to sell their business, what's in the road ahead. And if I can help make the process easier and I can educate more and more people and add value to the process, I know that a fair share are going to come back when the time is right for me to help them. So I don't be afraid to call me. It's not going to cost you for the first call and probably won't cost you for the second call.
Well, that's awesome, man. Thanks so much. And as things change, hopefully I can get you back on again. So we
Sounds great,
will
Dave.
we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.